Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the fascinating, wildly complementary leadership formula that literally birthed a global corporate giant. We're going to unpack the history of the Sherwin-Williams company. By pulling directly from historical documents, we'll see exactly how a tiny, super risky venture transformed into a household name. All right, let's get right into it. Picture this. It's the summer of 1866. We meet a thrifty, incredibly meticulous young man named Henry Sherwin. Now, he had exactly $2,000 to his name, his entire life savings. And he essentially had three options for where to park his time and money: a safe bank, an established drug wholesaler, or a fledgling little firm selling paints, varnishes, and glass. Surprisingly, Sherwin sank every penny into the riskiest, least familiar option on the table: paint. In fact, he later admitted that he quite unexpectedly just kind of dropped into the paint business. But fast forward a few decades to 1919, and man, that initial $2,000 gamble had exploded into a staggering $34.1 million in revenue. Just let that sink in for a second. That is astronomical growth, especially when you consider the era. So you might be wondering, how exactly do you turn a single, incredibly risky bet into a global empire? Well, to answer that, we have to look way beyond just the raw financial numbers. We really need to examine the wildly distinct personalities, the very different men that drove this explosive growth and honestly created a corporate playbook that is just as relevant today as it was back then. Section 1. The $2,000 Gamble. Take a look at this. This 19th century lithograph shows exactly where the magic started: the early Canal Road paint and color works. The company was strategically planted in Cleveland, which was sitting at this absolutely crucial crossroads between Western raw materials and Eastern markets. Amidst a totally booming post-Civil War economy, Cleveland's population was just skyrocketing. So these early facilities were perfectly positioned to cater to an insatiable immediate need. Everyone needed to protect and decorate all the new residential buildings, ironworks, manufacturing equipment, and railroads that were springing up across a rapidly industrializing nation. But here's the thing: location was only half the equation. The leadership was the real catalyst here. Henry Sherwin was the meticulous, deeply disciplined brain of the whole operation. As one early partner noted, Sherwin believed a disorderly desk was an abomination. He brought a rigid, unyielding discipline to the factory floor. He insisted that a fine sense of order prevents mistakes, saves time, and pleases patrons. To Sherwin, neatness wasn't just about looking good. It was real economy and the absolute foundation of a solid business. Section 2. Inventing ready-mix paint. So back at the end of the Civil War, paint was usually mixed on site. Professional painters literally stood there manually combining oil or varnish with pigments. And as you can guess, it was incredibly inconsistent. Sherwin, being the perfectionist he was, wanted absolute uniformity. So by the mid-1870s, the company helped totally revolutionize the industry. They adopted these high-quality 21-inch stone grinding mills with water-cooled surfaces to crank out factory-prepared ready-mix exterior coatings. This new machinery ground pigments down to an extraordinary fineness and uniformity that was frankly unmatched at the time. Section 3. The Quality Guarantee. By 1880, they introduced this beauty: Painter's Prepared Paint, which was affectionately known and branded simply as SWP. Thanks to that meticulous stone grinding process we just talked about, SWP quickly became the nation's absolute best-selling outside house paint. It was basically the physical manifestation of Sherwin's total demand for order and excellence. And Sherwin didn't just quietly put it on shelves and hope people liked it. No way. He backed up this foundational product with a shockingly bold, risk-reversing guarantee. The company promised that if the paint was used properly, it would not crack, flake, or chalk off. And if it actually failed, get this, they offered to forfeit not just the value of the paint itself, but the actual cost of applying it. That kind of guarantee was completely unheard of. It immediately cemented consumer trust and defined their early, dominant position in the market. Section 4. Enter the visionary salesman. Okay, so here is where the narrative shifts drastically. Enter Walter H. Cottingham. If Sherwin was the quiet, meticulous, quality-obsessed brain of the company, Cottingham was its beating heart. He eventually became president, and he was this bombastic, highly energetic sales genius. This guy had started as a hardware store clerk at age 15 and just willed himself into becoming a miniature captain of industry. He was constantly pushing his team, writing these fiery editorials with titles like Enthusiasm, Pluck, and The Fight is On. His absolute favorite catchphrase? Get out and hustle. Section 5. Building a corporate culture. But Cottingham wasn't just all talk. He completely understood that if they were going to maintain massive, continent-spanning growth, they had to invest heavily in what he specifically called the human factor. Way before modern HR departments even existed, Cottingham was out there championing these wildly progressive employee welfare programs. He insisted on clean cloakrooms, he set up the very first company lunchrooms, and he created the Get-Together Club and Foreman's Club to hone management skills. The female employees even formed the BUG, or Brighten Up Girls clubs, for charitable work. Cottingham was clear about this. It wasn't charity. He asserted that a good staff simply deserves the fairest treatment, purely because it's fundamentally profitable to the business. Section 6. Covering the Earth. Empowered by this incredibly motivated workforce, the companies set its sights on aggressive global dominance. As you can see on this timeline, they built their empire through just relentless vertical integration. They wanted to control their own destiny, which meant they didn't just make paint anymore. In 1890, they literally bought their own steamship, the A.G. Lindsay, just to carry lumber. By 1902, they built their own linseed oil plant. They bought zinc mines, they bought smelters, and beyond just owning all the raw materials, they forged a massive alliance in 1905 with the renowned London firm Louis Berger & Sons, establishing international outposts everywhere from Canada to Australia, India, and China. All of this relentless ambition finally culminated in 1905 with a massive rebrand. They adopted one of the most famous logos in corporate history, the Cover the Earth logo. Now, before this, they used a pretty conservative image of a chameleon on a pallet. And actually, Sherwin initially balked at the whole Cover the Earth concept. He felt it was technically inaccurate since they were still mostly operating in North America at the time. But Cottingham, ever the visionary salesman, confidently promised that while it wasn't strictly accurate right that second, it very, very soon would be. And you know what? They absolutely lived up to it. By setting up these cutting-edge chemical products departments and mastering the complex organic chemistry of industrial coatings, the company scaled up incredibly fast. They started producing an astonishing 600 distinct products. We're talking everything from marine equipment coatings and railway paints to intermediate dyes. They were literally engineering a specialized finish for every possible surface out there. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a critical question to think about. In today's business landscape, are you relying solely on a brilliant product? The modern corporate playbook is still so heavily defined by this historic complementary formula. It took Henry Sherwin's rigorous, uncompromising quality control, meeting Walter Cottingham's boundless enthusiasm and heavy investment in people to build a true empire. What we should all take away from this is that a great product is only half the battle. The culture, the people, and the unbridled hustle, that is what truly allows a business to cover the earth. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I hope this sparks some curiosity about the fascinating history behind the brands we interact with every single day.